I'm leaving my 5-year relationship in secret because my boyfriend refuses to work, lives off me, threatens self-harm when I tried to leave, and will likely be homeless. I feel like a monster, but staying has destroyed me. 35 female, have been in what I now recognize as a dead-end relationship with my partner, James, 39 male, for the past 5 years. Intellectually, I know that leaving him is probably the healthiest and most rational choice for me, but emotionally I feel deeply conflicted. Mainly because if I do leave, he will almost certainly end up homeless. That knowledge weighs on me heavily and makes every decision feel cruel, even when I know staying is slowly draining me. James is not violent, and in the first year of our relationship, I genuinely felt happy, safe, and emotionally contained. There were moments where I truly believed we could build a stable life together. But over time, what has become impossible to ignore is his overall attitude toward life and the sheer amount of emotional baggage he carries. That baggage has never really been addressed or worked through, and it has instead hardened into something that has left him almost incapable of functioning as a fully independent adult. He is a father, and I do believe he loves his children deeply. However, he has never been the provider he wanted or expected to be, and that failure has completely consumed his sense of self-worth. It doesn't help that his ex-wife has gone on to become very successful. She works for an organization that is highly visible and deeply embedded in the local community, involved in jobs, events, and social services. Because of this, James is constantly confronted with the contrast between his life and hers. Even when he tries to avoid it, he can't. To be fair, I've only had limited interaction with her, but from what I've seen, she seems like a reasonable and decent person. Still, her success has become a constant reminder to him of everything he feels he failed at. On top of that, his family history is deeply fractured. His father is extremely successful, but has completely cut him and his siblings off. From what I understand, his father is self-made and paid for his own education through years of sacrifice, and as a result, he has very little respect for his children, who didn't follow the same path. To make matters worse, his father left his mother and remarried a woman he openly refers to as his dream girl, which has added another layer of bitterness, resentment, and unresolved trauma within the family. All of this has contributed to James feeling abandoned, inadequate, and permanently stuck. When I entered this relationship, I knew I was dating someone whose path looked very different from mine. I was already working hard to advance my career, but I wasn't wealthy, established, or in any position of real power. Most of my success existed on paper rather than in practice. I wasn't expecting James to suddenly become rich or highly successful. I didn't need that. I believed we could grow together in a realistic, supportive way. We talked early on about being a team, about encouraging each other, building stability slowly, and facing challenges together as a couple. After he lost his job, everything collapsed in a way I don't think either of us fully understood at the time. What I initially believed would be a temporary setback became a permanent state of stagnation. There has been no real stability since, no long-term plan, no consistent effort, no visible determination to rebuild his life. I kept telling myself that people fall sometimes, that being in between jobs happens, that love means patience. I thought I was being supportive by giving him space to get his thoughts together, to grieve the loss of what he thought his life should be. But that space slowly turned into a void that swallowed everything. Losing that job annihilated his self-esteem, especially because his father had helped him get it as a way to repair their broken relationship. When he lost it, it felt like losing his father all over again. He cut contact entirely, and with that he lost not only emotional support but also access to the kind of opportunities that had once been available to him. I could empathize with the pain of that rejection, but empathy alone doesn't build a future. I tried, really tried, to help him move forward. I helped search for jobs, offered to revise his resume, suggested certifications, online courses, trade programs, anything that might help him gain leverage. That's when I began to see a side of him I hadn't fully acknowledged before. He is deeply resistant to effort that doesn't provide immediate results. He wants shortcuts. He wants things to magically align. He believes he deserves a certain status, salary, and respect, yet refuses to take even one step back in order to move forward. He won't invest time in learning new skills, but he also won't accept lesser work with humility. Watching this contradiction play out again and again was maddening. It felt like loving someone who was standing still on purpose, while insisting the world was the problem. Eventually, he found a job with minimal responsibility, no paperwork, no decision-making, no leadership. It required physical endurance, and from day one, the complaints poured in. His boss was genuinely disrespectful, and I don't dismiss that, but every job has challenges. He complained about the physical strain, the schedule, the lack of appreciation. Then he was fired abruptly. After that came almost a full year of unemployment. A year where I carried everything on my shoulders: rent, utilities, groceries, emergencies, while watching my savings disappear and my anxiety skyrocket. I was exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. I felt like I was aging rapidly, emotionally and physically, while he remained frozen. When he finally found another job, I felt hope again. Real hope. It was across town, but the pay was decent enough that we could share responsibilities. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. That relief didn't last. He was fired again. Months later, nearly 8, he found yet another job in the same field. This time, the company sent him home without explanation. That was about 18 months ago. Since then, there has been nothing. No urgency. No visible panic. No sustained attempt to change his situation. This is the third time I've asked him to leave. When I look at the numbers, it's devastating. In 5 years together, he's been employed for less than 2.8 years total. That means more than half of our relationship has been defined by instability and financial dependence. Every time I've brought up separation, it hasn't been out of cruelty or impatience. It's been because I reached a point where I could no longer survive the situation without losing myself completely. I've found myself calculating bills down to the cent, ending months with nothing left for myself. Not a haircut. Not a new shirt. Not a small pleasure. I don't consider myself vain, but I barely recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. We don't have sex. We haven't in a long time. I've lost interest in trying to look attractive because it feels pointless. Desire doesn't survive resentment, and resentment has been slowly poisoning me for years. When I tell him he needs to leave, he doesn't fight. He doesn't argue. He doesn't reassure me. He just goes quiet. That silence is devastating. It makes me feel invisible, used, and emotionally abandoned. It's like screaming into a void and realizing no one is coming. I didn't ask him to leave because he struggled. I asked him to leave because watching him waste his life, waiting endlessly for the perfect circumstances, the perfect job, the perfect moment, has destroyed my ability to see him as a partner. Whatever attraction once existed has eroded under the weight of disappointment, exhaustion, and unmet responsibility. I don't see a future when I look at him. I see a cycle that never ends. There's still something resembling friendship between us. We coexist. We share space. We function like roommates who know each other too well. I used to fantasize about finding love elsewhere, about sleeping with anyone who wouldn't make me feel like furniture in my own life. Not someone specific, just the idea of being wanted, seen, desired. But even that fantasy has faded. I don't want escape anymore. I don't want drama. I don't want revenge or validation. I just want peace. And for the first time, I'm starting to accept that peace might only be possible without him, even if that means facing the guilt of knowing he may end up with nothing. At this point, I've stopped introducing him as my life partner. That realization alone feels like a quiet admission of truth I've been avoiding for a long time. I still care about him. I don't hate him. He has redeeming qualities, and I won't deny them. When I was sick, he took care of me without complaint. When my PTSD anxiety flared up, rooted in a previous marriage where I was financially drained and emotionally hollowed out, he was patient and gentle and helped ground me. Those things mattered to me deeply. They still do. But the problem is that those good deeds now feel like a cruel echo of my past. I recognize the pattern too well. A man who is kind in crisis, emotionally dependent, unable to stand on his own, and slowly pulling me back into the role of provider, rescuer, and emotional anchor. At least my ex-husband, for all his faults, held the same job for 18 years. With James, everything feels unstable, temporary, and unresolved. Where I live, tenant laws are strict. I've renewed my lease twice based on his promises that things would change, that he'd get back on his feet, that this phase was temporary. He's not on the lease, but the last time I asked him to leave, he flatly told me he would never go back to living with his family. It wasn't a discussion. It was a statement. And I felt trapped by it. A few days ago, I woke up and discovered he had eaten all of my snacks. It sounds so small, so petty, but something inside me snapped. I've always shared with him food, money, space, energy, but this time I felt nothing but rage. Rage that he contributes nothing, yet feels entitled to everything. Rage that I have to budget my own comforts while he consumes without thought. Rage that I'm shrinking myself to survive in a situation I never agreed to long-term. I don't want to end up chained to him, financially or emotionally. Our bedroom is dead. Part of that is because his interest in sex faded long ago, and part of it is because mine did too, after months of questioning my own desirability, wondering why he no longer wanted me, and receiving no explanation. Intimacy doesn't survive silence and avoidance. I stopped trying to initiate because rejection without clarity erodes something fundamental inside you. Now we coexist without touch, without passion, without connection. We're not partners, we're occupants of the same space. I've been quietly working toward leaving him without telling him. That sentence alone makes me feel guilty, but every time I've tried to be transparent, it has backfired. The last time I gave him advance notice, his blood pressure spiked so badly, I was genuinely scared. Another time, he told me he was going to unalive himself. I offered compromises, living apart but staying together, giving him time, helping him transition, but he either said nothing or deflected completely. Every serious conversation ends with him sweeping everything under the rug and waiting for me to back down. And I always have. My family cares about him, but they've finally started to see what I've been living with. They see that he doesn't contribute. My brother said something that hit me hard. James isn't a bad person, but he's a ball and chain, and he has no dignity left. That hurt to hear, but it also rang painfully true. My family supports my decision to leave, yet they're worried about what will happen to him once I'm gone. And so am I. That's the part that keeps me up at night. Not whether I should leave, I know I should, but what happens to him afterward. I don't want to fall back into old patterns of guilt and rescue. I've sent him listings for rooms he could rent. I've helped him rewrite his resume more times than I can count. I've encouraged him to take jobs that would at least provide income and structure. But he wants an office job. No sweating. No physical discomfort. No warehouse work. No stepping down. He wants dignity without sacrifice, stability without effort. And I can't carry that anymore. I'm exhausted from being the only adult in this relationship. I'm tired of feeling like my needs come second to his fragility. I'm tired of being afraid that choosing myself will destroy him. I know where that road leads. I've walked it before. And this time, I don't want to disappear trying to save someone who won't save himself. I finally blew up the other day and said something I've been holding inside for years. I told him that none of this would be happening if he had invested his time in getting some kind of education, training, or skill instead of waiting endlessly for the perfect job under the perfect conditions. I wasn't screaming, but I wasn't gentle either. I was angry, exhausted, and completely empty of patience. He didn't respond. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just went quiet, like he always does. That silence is one of the hardest parts of all of this. He doesn't yell. He doesn't insult me. He doesn't raise his voice. He isn't violent or aggressive. He isn't cruel. And sometimes I think that's why I've stayed as long as I have, because it feels like there are far worse human beings out there who would deserve to be left out on the street, and here I am preparing to walk away from someone who just shuts down instead of fighting back. The last time I gave him a deadline, he froze completely and asked me to stop because I was making him anxious. He looked genuinely distressed, like he was having a real anxiety episode, not trying to manipulate me. And that's usually where my resolve collapses. Legally, I can't just kick him out. Even though he doesn't pay rent, he's considered a registered tenant where I live. Tenant laws here are extremely strict, and I don't want to put myself at risk. So I made a decision I never thought I would make. I'm waiting until the end of my lease. I'm planning to move everything out while he's at the theater where he spends time with a crew he knows. Sometimes they throw him $50 for helping out, which he hands to me toward his phone bill. Sometimes they don't. That's the extent of his contribution now. Logically, I know leaving is the best thing I can do for myself. I've tried everything else. I've helped him write resumes. I've sent him listings for rooms he could rent. I've suggested training programs, certifications, and realistic jobs he could take in the meantime. He refuses anything physical, anything uncomfortable, anything that doesn't align with his idealized version of himself. He wants an office job with no sweat, no strain, no compromise. Meanwhile, I'm drowning financially, emotionally, mentally. What truly haunts me is the image of him coming home and realizing I'm gone. No argument. No warning this time. Just an empty apartment and his belongings placed neatly into a storage unit. We almost never fight. And when we do, it's because I finally snap after months of swallowing resentment. I'm the one who raises my voice. I'm the one who lashes out. He just absorbs it in silence, and somehow that silence makes me feel like the monster. Leaving this way feels like betrayal. It feels cowardly. It feels cruel. I never wanted to disappear on someone I once loved. But every other approach has failed because he either shuts down completely or convinces me to stay through guilt, fear, and my own sense of responsibility. I don't want to hurt him, but I don't want to disappear myself either. I'm terrified that choosing myself makes me a bad person, even though staying is slowly erasing who I am. So here I am, doing the thing I know I have to do, while feeling like I'm committing an unforgivable act. I know this relationship is over. I know I can't keep sacrificing my life for someone who refuses to move forward. But the weight of knowing he'll be left without a home sits heavy on my chest. Am I the a-hole for leaving this way, knowing what it will do to him? Or am I just finally choosing myself after years of being trapped by someone else's stagnation?